Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. It's nice to see so many people coming in to enjoy our data for today. Okay. Welcome to the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trend webinar designed specifically for community college professionals. Of course, we welcome any community college or four-year professionals as well. This is not your average webinar. It's an opportunity to gain insights into labor market data for program evaluation and much more. We also will show how you can use data to debunk some common myths about community college programs. There are a few housekeeping items to get started with. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a place labeled Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions there. We will get to as many as we can during this session, and we'll follow up later with you if we run out of time. My Gray colleagues and I will be available for chat during the duration of this session. You will receive a link to the webinar recording and presentation slides in the next few days. Please look for it in your email. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bob Atkins, who's not only the founder of Gray Decision Intelligence, but also a program evaluation expert and a best-selling higher ed author. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much. I always feel a little embarrassed at that introduction, but it's mostly true. I've done a lot of program evaluations, and I did finally publish a book. And I just found out a few days ago that we're up to about 2,500 sold. So I'm very excited about that. The book was on program evaluation, and it's called Start, Stop, or Grow. And it's a pretty good guide to the how-to of evaluating programs. So if any of you are facing that problem at your institution, it's a $25 investment in a methodology for doing the work. So what's going on out there in the market? So I'm going to start off by describing a little bit of what a program evaluation system is. And this is derived from my work in the book and also informed it, as a matter of fact. The first part about a program evaluation system is it has to take into account the mission of the institution. That's why you exist. You're not for profits. You're not even there necessarily to add more students, although I always like growth as a strategy for higher ed. But you're there to fulfill a particular mission. Often in community colleges, part of that mission is in the name, serving your community. So that mission is a vital part, and programs that may be small, may lose money, if they're mission critical, are still appropriate to keep in a higher education institution. Second, the program has to meet your academic standards, whether that's a pass rate on the NCLEX or a graduation rate for that particular program, or just the rigor of the program itself. It is important that academic programs are up to your own standards for academic performance. Then I believe you have to look out at the market and say, what does the market want? And people, especially in career colleges and community colleges, tend to equate the market actually with what employers want. That's half the story. Well, it's about a third of the story. You also have to look at competition and say, how competitive is this? Is the market need already met? If I get into this, will I actually be able to attract enough students? And that leads to student demand. It is not helpful to your community or your employers if you launch a program that hypothetically meets an employer need, but no students want to take it. That doesn't benefit anybody, and it can cost a lot of money. And it sounds far-fetched, but had one client who's got investment of $500,000 in a particular program, 5 students showed up. Another client spent $1 million to build out a program, had 0 students show up. Both those were community colleges. So it's absolutely essential when you think about markets that you think about student demand. And that's not to say employer needs are not important. That's not at all true. This is both and. You need to understand both of those things in depth so you make decisions in programs that both attract students and allow those students to go out and get good jobs in the marketplace. Now, if the market's good, honestly, generally margins take care of themselves because you have enough students in classes to make them to earn a return on that and be able to reinvest in current and new programs. So margins is looking at the revenue cost and margin of delivering an academic program so that you can understand which programs generate enough margin to subsidize the ones that don't. You can't make these decisions with an algorithm, at least not yet. I look forward to the day when we have one, but I can't tell you that we have one at this point. In order to make a good decision, you need the right people from your organization involved in a good, disciplined, and efficient process to make program decisions. Now, there's a new dimension to all of this that is possible now, which is the ability to predict the outcome of your program decisions. We couldn't do this until a few months ago, but we can now tell you in advance approximately how big a program is going to be at your institution. This is very helpful both for picking out new programs with high potential, as well as for looking at your existing programs and seeing which ones are not living up to the prediction. That's a sign that there may be unaddressed market opportunity and you have a program that has the potential to grow. So that's what a program evaluation system is. It encompasses hard data, qualitative input like mission, and importantly involves the right people in the right process to make program decisions that are well-informed and appropriate for your particular institution and market. Now what I'm going to do is go and share with you market data. This will be at the US level. If we were working with you, we would have this data all the way down to the particular market you serve, which might be, just as an example, 40 miles around your campus, stop at the river, because that's a state border. And that's what we do for our clients so that the market data that they get is closely tuned to the market they really serve. Now, I mentioned student demand. There are several sources we use for student demand, and actually one is missing on this chart, and I've been looking at it for months. But traditionally, the best people had was IPEDS, the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Database. It's a very authoritative source, very complete, very rich, but very old. The most recent data in IPEDS, and it'll get updated in the next month or two, is from 2022. But if you think about that's by major, so, and you're looking at completions in IPEDS, not students enrolled, they don't have that by program. Now I got to realize that, oh, that student picked what program to go into 2 to 4 years before they graduated. So that 2022 data is really representing decisions that were made back in 2019 or before. To me, 5 years ago sounds like a long time, especially when you're talking about something that evolves as rapidly as student preferences. So again, authoritative but old. Enrollment, we update 3 times a year. And at the moment, we're about, I think we have fall of last year in there. Oh, we have spring of this year as well. So very current information of what people actually did, what they enrolled in by program. Unfortunately, we don't have that by institution yet, but you can see what's going on in your market by academic program. Google actually gives you a little insight into what's going to happen. It's students who are looking for programs, so they'll show up next fall or spring when they've made up their minds, but it gives you a sense of what they're interested in looking forward. So think of those 3 time frames: past, present, and future. So let's take a look at the leading indicator, which is Google. And first, let me explain how to read the chart. So the gray boxes here are 2021 data. The light blue is 2022. The dark blue is 2023. And the light blue on the right, the very light blue, is 2024. So what we're hoping for is to see bars that go up year over year. The gray bar would be lowest, somewhat like August. The blue bar would be higher, and the black bar would be higher than that. And our light blue bar for 2024 would be even higher. That'd be great. That would mean we had 4 years of continuous growth. By the way, not something that occurs a lot in the real world. But this year, this is such high growth that I'm skeptical there might be something wrong with the data. So take it with a grain of salt. But the data in July, Google search volume for academic programs was up 48%, which is a heck of a lot. I have never seen growth like that. So I think it bodes well for higher ed. It probably tells us that the economy is getting soft and people are starting to think about going back to school more than they were in the past. Now, unfortunately, when you have that much demand, the other thing that happens is Google raises its prices. And indeed, in this case, cost per click has gone up some 7% year over year. So many of you may ask, what the heck is cost per click? I just had that question this morning. Well, when you advertise, for example, for a particular keyword like nursing program, and you place that ad in Google, it asks you how much you're willing to bid to be on the first page or to get a click for that program. And for the average program now, to get a single click, you've got to be bidding $16. And that doesn't sound very expensive if it got you a student, but it doesn't. You know, ballpark rough rule, not even a rule of thumb, but sort of an educated guess is you need at least 100 clicks to get one student. So now suddenly we're talking about a student costing $1,500 just in Google marketing to get them in the door. So that's a very hefty price tag. What's growing fastest out there? And this is in terms of Google search volumes. And we've got some really stunning numbers here. You know, it makes sense if we have 45% overall growth, but I don't recall ever seeing a month with percentage changes like this. So I would also say, come back next month. We're going to be going through this data. We're going back to our data supplier to validate. So just take this with a little caution. The ranking is probably correct. The absolute values may be a little high. We won't know until we've seen a couple months of data. But firefighting up 268%. CTE programs as a whole, 5 of them on the top 10. Machine technology, machinist, airline flight attendant, barbering, and HVAC maintenance tech. And then we go to health-related occupation programs, dental assisting, MRI, diagnostic medical sonography, ultrasound to all of us, and occupational therapy assistant. All of these up over 100%. So a lot of interest in going back to college in 4 broad areas: CTE, health, and one other here I skipped over, which is advertising and PR. Now let's look at a more current indicator and what's going on in enrollment. Those of you who've been with me for the last few months, I'm looking at numbers from 23, 24 on the left. Certificate enrollment up 6%. Nice turnaround from COVID period where it was falling, been up 2%, up 5%, now up 6%. So we are seeing a little bit of growth, and you could even argue we're seeing an acceleration in growth. Been a long time coming is all I can say. I'm sure many of you feel the same way, to finally see more students coming in the door than were here last year and the year before. U.S. total enrollment at the associate level is a little less promising, but we do finally have a turnaround. It essentially flattened out in 22, 23, down 1%, but you know that's rounded up, I think. So and we're up 2% in 23, 24. So we're finally seeing an uptick at the associate level. I think the economy is a tailwind here. As you all know, the unemployment rate's been scooching up a little bit. What I'm seeing out there in terms of places like Glassdoor suggests that the job market's getting tight. I think it started tightening in the white-collar space. I mentioned Glassdoor is pretty much a white-collar site. I think it is extending from what I've read to the more blue-collar areas now. So all of which bodes actually well for enrollment in college. LPN was our #1 course in enrollment. So this is real life people enrolled in a certificate. LPN was the highest volume certificate program of anything we mentioned. And it's really interesting to think of these numbers relative to the median. So the median program is the middle program in a stack of all programs. And the middle program had 172 students enrolled. LPN had 85,000 students enrolled. So these large programs constitute the vast majority of all students in certificate programs. And it tapers off fairly quickly. And typically these top 10, I said total, or more than half. It's not more than half, but it's a very high percentage of all students are going to be in the top 10 programs. So these are critically important. As you'll notice, a number of health, we've got 4 health-related programs. I mentioned LPN, but we've got medical clinical assistant at almost 60,000 students enrolled, EMT paramedic, 37,000, health and information records tech, 35,000. Then we have CTE coming along with also 4, welding tech, auto mechanic tech, electrician, and HVAC, all of which lead to good high-paying jobs after graduation. Now, I will say, and we have to be careful with this, there's been some hype about this, about the welder who makes $150,000. There are welders who make $150,000, but there just aren't very many of them at all. The average welder makes about $50,000. So when I say good wage, it's a good middle-class wage. There's no question that that there's more pay for a 4-year degree than there is for most of your CTE. There are exceptions, by the way. very particular things. Auto mechanics get paid very well. And it's not as, I won't go further on this. And there are electricians that make a lot of money too, but the averages are not what some people sometimes hype them up to be. So what's going up in terms of student enrollment in certificate programs? And this is total enrollment now and growth. And auto body led the list, 162% increase in enrollment. Medical health, clinical assistant specialist up 38%. Let's look at the other career and technical. Electrical equipment install repair up 29%. Sterile processing tech up 26%. Now, let's shift over at health. Actually, I'm a little surprised not to see more of it, but part of the problem most of your health programs have is they're so large that it's actually difficult for them to grow at a high percentage, both just because of numbers in the sense that you got to grow 38%, you need a lot more students if you're a 1,000,000 student program than if you're a 100 student program. But also, there are often clinical issues here of getting enough slots to grow, and there are limitations that are outside of the institution. So it makes it harder for them to hit the really big growth numbers. We've also got sterile processing tech up 26%. And then we have a collection of other programs: organizational leadership, marketing management general, and cybersecurity information insurance up 22%. And I always keep coming back to cybersecurity. This is a very big program at this point. It belies my earlier point. It's managed to grow despite being large, and it's up another 22% in this period. So let's look at the associate level now. And first, we'll just look at what's big in terms of total enrollment. And again, these large programs constitute a huge percentage of total enrollment. Business administration management tops the list. Not unusual. Registered nursing, number 2. Computer science is number 3. And then we have psychology, followed by biology, biological and physical sciences. In many cases, these are the beginning of a transfer program into 4-year pre-med, among other things. Then we have engineering general, bookkeeping and accounting tech, criminal justice, and here again is our cybersecurity information assurance at the associate level. What's growing? Auto body tech. I have a little problem conceptually with auto body tech at the associate level. It's probably more education than an auto tech needs. On the other hand, many people go into something like auto repair and then shortly later in their career switch over to something else, at which point that associate degree can be very helpful to them. In other direct workforce programs, airline commercial pilot up 22%, and rad tech up 19%, along with airframe mechanic tech up 17%. And by the way, this is one of those where the pay is extremely good. Now, in what could be transfer programs that students may just get an associate's and stop, but these generally prepare them to go on to 4-year. We have anthropology up 38%, cybersecurity, one of the top 10 in size, also up 35%, mechanical engineering up 24%, visual and performing arts up 18%, and you have economics and entrepreneurship both up 16%. And I always look at entrepreneurs and want to warn them. As an entrepreneur myself, careful. This is not an easy road. I don't suppose anything is, but boy, there's some excitement when you're an entrepreneur. Let's keep going. Non-degree courses. Now we're taking things that don't amount up to a degree. It's what you hear about. I'm going to go out and learn some skills. So how do you identify the skills that people really want to learn? Well, one way is to look at Coursera, Udemy, and some of the other MOOCs and see what they offer. And in particular, Coursera and Udemy are kind enough to tell you how many students have enrolled in those programs. They give you the total number of learners. And so what we do is we look at it every month to figure out how many learners enrolled in the prior month. And Monica, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've got Science of Wellbeing, 4.7 million students enrolled. It's an unbelievable number in one online platform in one course. How to Learn, Powerful Mental Tools, 3.8 million learners enrolled. Successful Negotiation Tactics and Strategies, Personal Development, is a personal development thing, up 1.6 million. First Step Korean, 1.6 million. So it's interesting with the decline in language programs in general in the US, that something like Korean could attract this many new learners in a month. It may be that people have just shifted where they want to learn some of these things. The other thing I would caution everybody is enrolling in a MOOC course is not the same as enrolling in college. And the percentage of these folks who are actually going to stay through the entire course, and it's only one course, I would guess is, down in the single digits. So, 8, 9, 10% will actually hang in there to get to the end of a course. That is a far cry from the end of a degree as well. So again, these are not directly analogous to the volume enrollment in a college because the attrition rates are so high, but they're still enormous. I mean, let's assume it's 1 in 10 students stay to the end of science and well-being. That's 470,000 students who completed that course. So, by the way, I don't have the exact percentage of completion for any of these. They don't publish that. But it's still, as I say, the scope of this is enormous. The value from your perspective is it tells you what programs or courses you could offer where there's a ready audience for you. Highest skills, what are the particular skills are they teaching? In each Coursera course, they tell you what skills you're going to learn. So we analyze that data to figure out what skills people are trying to acquire. And data tops the list, data analysis, data visualization, top 2. And here we're looking at close to 90,000 people, a little over 90,000 people who've taken time to take a course that emphasizes those skills. Then we have a whole bunch of interesting personal development skills, savoring, meditation, happiness, gratitude, all the things we'd like to be doing, but that most of us don't do nearly often enough. And then learning to learn, another personal development skill that's had 30 million people enroll in it over time. Then we have a few more technical things down here as well. Pomodoro technique, meta learning. For those of you who have Italian parents, no, Pomodoro is not a tomato. It's a time management technique that's got that nickname. Meta learning, 30 million. And finally, test prep, 28 million. Let's switch over now. We've been talking about indicators of student demand. Let's see what's going on the employment front. First, I want to caution you about how to interpret employment data and things to question when you look at employment data. One of them is what you might think of as a pretty arcane concept of a crosswalk, which is a common term in data science, not much of any place else. But fundamentally, it's assigning, in our case, what we're talking about is how you assess what jobs are available, what occupations specifically are available to a graduate of a particular degree. So to say that in crosswalk terms, what programs, what occupations does a graduate of a given program go into? So, and remember, they may go into more than one. Now, people have built crosswalks and they relied on a premise of direct prep. One of those is the National Center for Education Statistics, generally a reliable source. But in the case of crosswalks, the labor market economists really built this. And they had a premise that we should only indicate jobs for which a person has been directly prepared. And then you might, well, you ask yourself, well, how did I know if they're directly prepared? The answer is you don't. And but the economists had to figure that out. So they did their best. But it's very important, this little footnote here, the CIP-SOC, that's Classification of Instructional Program or Academic Program, SOC, and that's the occupations that people go into. Crosswalk is not based on actual empirical data. Oh, and you might well ask yourself, well, what is it based on? And the answer is it's based on opinion. And it turns out those opinions are not a very good indicator and were not intended to indicate what people really did. So if you take something like fashion apparel, they said, well, you could be a fashion designer. And as many of you know, that's not really what people of fashion, very few people with a fashion and apparel degree actually end up as fashion designers. So if you look over, it is a chunk. It's the number one thing that they go into with 1,972 folks getting that job within 4 years after graduation in our data set, where we can see what people do. We have a data set of 70 million people, and we can see what they majored in and what jobs they have. But they go into all sorts of other things: mechanical drafters, web designers, multimedia artists, general operations managers, marketing managers. Overall, they go into hundreds of other occupations, 633 to be precise. So be very careful when somebody tells you there are no jobs for a fashion apparel graduate, or there are no jobs for a history graduate, a particular bugaboo of mine as a history graduate. Generally speaking, that's flat not true. And it goes back to the crosswalks that were not designed to really tell you what people actually do. They were designed to tell you what a labor market economists think they should do. And as you all know, students are ornery. They generally are not going to do what you tell them to do. And when it comes to their jobs, they more often than not don't do what they've been directly trained to do. There are exceptions, by the way. Nurses is one of them, where over 80% of nurses do go into the fields for which they're directly prepared, i.e. nursing. But the reason I bring this up is that when you're evaluating your programs, if you're looking at most databases, they're going to tell you how many jobs there are for which that student is directly prepared. And that number is going to be wrong. And it's going to be wrong by a multiple of 100. And when you're wrong, and I have to multiply by 100 to get to the right answer, to me, that's not good enough. If you're off by 10%, I could live with it. But those numbers can be very, very wrong. So do check when you're looking at jobs available for graduates in databases, and understand how they're deciding what occupations to align with a particular program. So job postings. What happened? Well, we've got more good news here for the economy, but not actually good news for higher education. Job postings went up 25%. And you can see if we went back to the tail end of last year, it was down, down, down. September, October, November, December, down in January, a little bit up in February, then down in March. And now we're starting to see a steady pace of increase in job postings. So I think that bodes well, as I say, for the economy, for a soft landing. But remember, the more people who have jobs, the fewer are going to go back to college. Largest job posting volume, certificate and associate. What are the 10 fastest growing in terms of job posting volume? I'm sorry, what are the largest ones? Registered nurses, general and operations managers, nursing assistants, heavy tractor or trailer drivers, home health, and licensed practical nurses. Pretty heavy representation of healthcare here between our nurses, our nursing assistants, and personal care and LPN. We had a few others. Retail sales, almost always one of the biggest, 63,000 job postings. Computer user support specialists, 27,000, and customer service reps, 21,000. Now, let's take a look at it by occupation and see what's going on. So now we've taken occupational groups. For those of you who are SOC nerds, 2-digit occupation codes, the first 2 digits. So healthcare, by far the largest occupation, 221,000 job postings. And that's not all the healthcare. We have healthcare support with 104,000. Finally, we get out of healthcare and we're into sales with 100,000 job postings. Then office admin and support, 91,000. Management, 89,000. A lot of business here in the center. And then we move off to more logistics, transportation, installation, maintenance, and repair, computer and mathematical, education, instruction, and library, and business and financial operations. So one of the ones that's often overlooked, honestly, is sales and related. Many people who don't expect to are going to end up in sales. It's still, I've never met anybody who could make an academic program out of that, even though it probably could and should be. There's lots to learn about how to do it effectively. And then, of course, how to do it within a particular market, whether it's medical devices or selling, I don't know, widgets. So, but you're not going to see a lot of programs that help people prepare for that, for better, for worse. Fastest growing occupational categories. What's up? Again, we see some healthcare right at the top of the list, practitioners, healthcare support, transportation and moving, then install and repair. We get to food prep at 18,000, and then we're into a couple management, computers, sales drops back a little bit in terms of growth, education, instruction, and library, new entrant, and business and financial operations. I mentioned pay. So now we're going to look by occupational category. A caution here. This is not restricted to 2-year education. So this is for the entire category. So some of these average salaries may be considerably higher than you would get with an associate degree or certificate. Healthcare gets paid well. Not surprising, the doctors are averaged in there, and as are nurses, who are increasingly higher paid. Computer and mathematics, $86,000. Physical science, $74,000. And I'm going to drop all the way back down to a category that may be of interest to you all, which is education, instruction, and library, $57,000 average salary for folks in that field. Now we're looking for, now we're looking by occupational category, that 2-digit occupation, and you can see we're at 54,000 for installation, maintenance, and repair. Community and social service, only 54,000. Healthcare support, 53,000. Construction, 51,000, and so on, until you get to food prep at 40,000. And honestly, this is where minimum wages start to kick in and be important for those folks to earn a living wage. Job posting by industry. Healthcare was by far the fastest in unit change, and we can see it's followed by a variety of other industries. Even religious institutions managed to grow. What skills are people looking for out there in the workforce? Nursing, number one. Rehab, flavor of nursing, as well as several other professions, number two. And just an important point here, that light blue is healthcare, and you can see our list is dominated by skills in healthcare. 8 out of 10 are healthcare skills. Mental health, physical therapy, vital signs, life support, all these are skills that are highly sought after. Behavioral health and acute care as well. Then fortunately, we have a couple that aren't healthcare. One that I would say is required for almost every job is Microsoft Office, and having those basic office skills is really a foundational element of starting off in a career. By the way, in almost any profession, you could be a nurse and you'll need to know Office. You could be a business person. You could be working on a job site and need to know Office. And construction is the last one. This, I suspect, is going to be increasingly beleaguered as we go forward. You've got a decline in retail buildings required. You've got a decline. You've got people not coming back to the office. You've got high interest rates. It's a very difficult environment for construction right now. What durable skills? So if you think of what I would call technical skills and durable skills, the highest growth durable skills are pretty interesting these days. It's about management and leadership, then customer service. And here's a very difficult skill, innovation, to develop, and then collaboration. So if you think about these are very fundamental things people could learn in college, sometimes do, but management, leadership, and collaboration are sometimes called soft skills, but they're in very high demand. Where is the demand declining for a skill? I'm a little shocked by this number, a significant cut in the number of job postings that include planning as a requirement, a little bit less interest in detail, a little bit less interest in greeting customers, team effectiveness, and sincerity. So finally, let me show you what we call an occupational report. And let's take a look at what we can deliver now. We're very proud of this because in a sense, we've caught up. Many of you have asked for occupational reports, a simple place you go press a button and get the data you need about an occupation. So there you can come into our database and you can explore job postings. Many of you will want to do that to, for example, look at skills in particular and see what's hot and what's not. But many of you just want to get the data. You want a report on a particular occupation. So you'd press this button and here you're off to the races. So we're looking at general and operations managers here. We've selected that. And now I can see the industries. I can also filter by industry. I can filter by education level. And in this case, we have looked at associate and certificate. I can filter by salary, and I can look at skills and certs. And here I've picked a market as well. We have not selected any skills or certs. I could if I wanted to look for a particular skill and its frequency, but that's not what we're going to do now. So this is the first screen of the report. You can see the trend in job postings over the last 12 months. You can see the trend in wages. And you can see the number of companies posting jobs for general managers. Interesting here. I actually think the data is fascinating, I find. We've got an uptick in jobs for general managers, some 18%, 19% year over year. Wages had a spike, but are flattish now. And total companies advertising is actually way up from 62 to 229. Within that, we can see the top companies, top job titles, top industries, top cities. And I can see what programs are linked to that particular occupation. And if you want to dive in further, the report provides you more detailed information on median salaries. I can see, again, the change. I can see the distribution of salaries, and I can see the actual values for those salaries over time. It also gives you a word chart. What are these called? A word cloud for in-demand skills. So you can see at a glance, what are the hot skills required for a general manager? We talked about durable skills. Here we can see what durable skills are in particular demand. And it's comforting to see that we expect our managers to manage, and that's the number one skill. But then customer service and leadership lead that group. And again, on the right-hand side, there's a word cloud, so you can get a quick visual on what people are looking for. You can see the individual job postings, so you get a feel for what particular folks are looking for, who's posting that job, what the job titles are, and so forth. Oh, and importantly, what degree level is required, if any, for this particular position. So it's, you can create a report here that will get sent back to you. You'd pick your filters, which we've already done. You can hit download or email. And if you hit email, shortly after, you'll receive the report in your inbox. And this is the contents for that report, much of which we've been through. What will happen is you'll get that in a PDF in your inbox, and you'll have the information across all these categories so you can understand that particular occupation. We are working on creating one where you can cut it by academic program, so you can see all the occupations that are aligned with a particular academic program. That turns out to be a very nasty piece of data work, which is underway. We should have that for you, though, no more than a month or two from now. So you can get a report that's cut either by occupation or by academic program. And you'll have all the same kind of information. Obviously, the individual answers will be different. So let me summarize for you. In July, Google searches for academic programs rose 48%. Again, caution, that's a very large percentage growth. Want to see if that pans out over time. Similarly, firefighting looks like it's up an unreasonable amount. Average cost per click, the cost of getting a student, went up. Student enrollment certificate programs is up 6% year over year, very solid number. Associate enrollment is up 2%. Auto body collision and repair tech had the fastest new enrollment growth in 23-24. Watch out for direct prep cost walks. You need something that reflects what people really do, not what labor economists think they should do. There's a high volume and growth of job posting in healthcare industries and occupations. It really is very rapid. It's always been a big industry, but I'm a little surprised to see it growing at the pace that we saw in this data. And finally, we have an occupational report for you. So you can see all your job posting data in one place and understand what's going on among the employers in your markets. Now, I want to share one other thought with you today, and that is, what can you do when you have good data in your hands? And so it's what I like to refer to as what can you do with Gray in a day? There's literally months of work you can do with our systems in a few minutes. You can score, rank, and scan 1,500 academic programs in the particular market you serve. That takes about a minute. Select the ones out of that list that are of interest to you that you think might fit your institution. You can now, in our systems, click a button and get a one-page text report about the programs that are of interest to you. Each one summarizes all the numbers, something you can hand to your boss, something you can read and easily understand if our scorecards are a little daunting, and they can be daunting. Then you can go to the scorecard and say, okay, let me look at this in more depth. If it's an intriguing program, you like what you read, and you can see detailed information for that program, student demand, job openings, job postings, wages, and so forth, competition, and demographics, what kind of people tend to take this program. Our newest offerings I'm incredibly excited about is if you have our Predict, you can actually predict the potential size of a new program for your institution. Takes about a minute. And importantly, you can predict the potential size of the programs you already have. And with that, you can understand whether their existing programs, they're not living up to their potential, if you will, not living up to the prediction. That's not a bad thing. It just says, this is an opportunity for growth. There may be a market we haven't fully taken advantage of here. And then again, sort of amazing, just developed, we've developed pro forma financials for you. So you can take that estimate of program size, go through a series of screens, and in 20 minutes to half an hour, have built out 7-year pro forma financials for the program. So work that used to take months, once you're familiar with our stuff, you can do it in a few hours. And as we say, take the afternoon off. So it's really a breakthrough. We can give you a written program report in a minute and a half. And traditionally that took 6 to 8 weeks to do. And we've had clients hold those reports up side by side with reports that took 6 to 8 weeks. And their conclusion was the reports are comparable quality. I like to believe they're better because our data's better. But certainly it's a huge time saver. And by the way, typically when you get that 6-week report, you only get one at a time. So if you want 10 reports, you're waiting 60 weeks. With us, might be 20 minutes. So the things you can do with AI right now are amazing. We'll continue to integrate it into our systems, I hope, and I know many of you are working on integrating it into your curriculums as well. Now I'm going to stop. Don't say thank God when I say that. And I'm going to ask Wanel to take over. And what I'd like to do is see if there are any academic programs that you'd like to view in real time. We'll have to do the national level. It's not feasible really to do it at a local level in real time on our call. But if there's a program you'd like to see, we're glad to bring it up. So I'm going to stop.
I think we've got a couple.
So Bob, we do have 2 in the queue.
Great.
One of them is fire science, which I'm really interested in. I think that's pretty interesting. We also have a question that might be better answered if we connect them with one of our team. And that question is, are colleges interested in offering certificate, not degree in auto body? There's industry demand and student interest, but investment in equipment and personnel is high. Additionally, the auto body salary is less than a liable wage. What is your recommendation to proceed?
There absolutely are certificate programs in auto body. So that's really not a question. That absolutely exists, and it's pretty big actually. The wages I haven't looked at recently. I wouldn't be surprised if you're correct that the wages are low in that particular field. And I don't know what's happened in terms of job volumes, but we could look at it. That's certainly one we can pull up at the certificate level and have a look. So I think that means we have 3 IC stuff.
Any comments around what is your recommendation to proceed or not? Wouldn't it be beautiful if you could show up to a webinar and we can answer that question? You want to say anything about that?
Well, what I would do is let's go ahead and do it. The answer is always local though. So what you'll see is nationally, whether that's an attractive program or certificate, because it's usually not a program. And again, in the spirit of what can you do in a day with Gray, in 5 minutes, we'll have a pretty good understanding of whether that's attractive and what the potential issues are.
And sometimes the webinar finishes and we only have 5 minutes left, but we actually have 15. So let's get into some of these scorecards. Keep in mind that they will be at the national market. I am going to stay in order. I am going to start with fire science, and then after this, we'll look at
cybersecurity. I think. Well, cybersecurity and then auto body.
No, auto bodies first, and then cybersecurity.
Oh, okay. Great.
We're good. I'm staying true to the list here. Can everybody see my screen? Yes? Am I sharing the right screen? Good. Awesome. So we're looking at fire science. Let's stay on brand with things that we can do in a day, things that we can do quickly, things that we can do fast in our systems around program data. And right now we're looking at fire science scorecard, and immediately you're going to see a lot of colors. Typically there's a color scale that we like to follow down here. The darker the green, the better. The closer to the pink, the worst. The worst, I'm going to put it in quotes because it's always subjective. And then there's always areas where that will inverse. And you'll see that here with the double asterisks that you'll see where all of a sudden something large, like a 96th percentile under competitive intensity, is actually showing up as a pink, which is an alarm That's just because in the case of competition, you know, more might be less and less might be more, as opposed to
More
student.
competitors is not good.
Yeah. Well, depends who you ask, right? But typically it's not good. So when we're looking at student demand, you know, fire science, we can see as a whole, student demand is doing some good things here. We can focus in on where things are well when we start seeing some of these scoring outputs, right? So wherever there's a scoring output, that's going to be a metric that is influencing this overall score and how this program is ranking compared to all other programs in the market. So we can see things like, you know, Google search volumes, new student enrollment volumes, and completion volumes are all strong when it comes to the size metrics. And we're not capturing any international page views here for this program, which is why you see this 0. Okay. So student demand size is strong. And I think I could say there's some strength in the growth section of student demand, where the change volume and percentage for Google search are up. New student enrollment units and change percentage are up. And then completion volumes, units, and change are up. Notice how we keep both here. I think it's very important because a change volume of 397 is a 96th percentile change. But when we look at this in terms of percentage, we see it's really just a 3%, right? So this is just large and
It's a very big program growing, right? You had 396 in other programs, it might be 100% growth.
Exactly. So
by the way,
demand,
the way I always do this as a history major, personally, I focus on the colors. And, you know, it's not hard. Green is good, red is bad. So when you can glance at this and see, oh, almost all my indicators on size are dark green. That's great. And then you can see what I have to worry about. I don't have any international, and my Google search volume is good, not great. Similarly with growth. And that works across the entire sheet. So pretty quickly you can see my best attribute here really is student demand in the dark green. Employment's not quite as good, but it's very good. It's that light green 94th percentile. So for those of you who are not numbers people, the colors work. And by the way, they're really rigorous. I mean, they're based on the percentiles, so it's not a cop-out to use the colors as a way of understanding things.
Yep. And are there any specific questions around the different categories of data related to fire science? Because if not, I'm going to go ahead and move on to another scorecard just to
well, the wages here are not great. So
Yep.
you know, you're looking at $50,000. Now for a 2-year program, that's actually not bad. That's 81st percentile for those. But you know, for national, that's about a national average wage actually. What else?
I like the Google numbers.
Down below that, right? Google search cost per click.
Lots to take away from campus with graduates versus average and median program completions, if you want to touch on.
Yeah.
Behind those
well, the median, what I look at that is about how big is this program at other institutions. And so a normal program is around 10 completions. Remember that that's completions, not students enrolled. So in an associate's level, for a degree, you know, for an associate's degree, you're looking at probably 3 to 4 times that many students in the program. You know, 2 years to complete it, plus attrition, plus most people don't complete in 2. So that's probably 40 students in that program. So it's good size, it's not huge. And the Google competition index isn't, it's okay, about average. Only other thing I look at here, you were pointing out job postings per grad. It's a little tight at 0.9. That means there are only about 1 job posting for every graduate.
What about the value around the demographics data? What might this be suggesting here if we were going to start a new program?
Well, as most colleges are 60-40 female to male. So if you're trying to get more guys to come to campus to balance that out, then this program's a good one to think about because it's 88% male.
Great. And
I'm not advocating, by the way, if there's any reason why it should be 88% male. There really isn't. Women can be firefighters, but you know, that's where our society is right now. And it's more likely to pull in male students, which given the skew today is a good idea.
And there's a question in the chat around where can I find explanations of the categories. You can actually hover over these and it should show you a line. Maybe it's not working right now. That's okay. That's why we have a definitions tab, which is right up here on the right. And I won't click on it, but we are very transparent about where we get our data, and kind of why we use the data that we use. We love to talk about that. And we also have it available here in the system live that you can always interact with. Okay. I think we're
Let's do
ready to
another
move on
one.
to a different program. No?
So for those of you who are having fun out there, so in 5 minutes, you get a pretty good sense about fire science.
Yep.
And there's much more data you could dig into, by the way. All this
Mm-hmm.
has individual databases behind it where you can go look at it in more depth.
Yeah, and just to be explicit about that, right? We could actually look at what are the Google search volumes that we're tracking here and which ones are increasing and which ones are decreasing, right? We can actually go into the job posting totals and, look at what the skills are, look at the companies and, how that's translating across industries, et cetera. There's a lot of deep dives. The scorecard is a great place to just ground yourself, take 5 minutes and get a great understanding of what should I be focused on next when looking at this program and reviewing this program for my institution. Okay, so I think we're ready for the next program, and it was auto body, right? I think even for fire science, keep in mind that this 4302, and I won't go into this, but these are the type of conversations we would have. The 4302 is an entire family of programs, and that's always something that needs to be considered within program review. I think I saw the 430201 fire prevention being relevant as well. Great. Really quickly, I do want to highlight that we have some.
No, let's not do that. Let's go to the next program.
Okay. And then auto body, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So auto body, I did question the zip code in question. It wasn't confirmed, but I suspect
It's that auto body collision and repairs is the one that's really affiliated with this.
Good. That's the one I suspected too. Because the initial question was around degree level, like, hey, we want to do this at the certificate level. The first place I would probably look at when I look at the scorecard is the degree fit. I do want to kind of make sure I'm looking at this. Let's pretend I know nothing about auto body and I'm just looking at this from a completely, brand new standpoint. This would immediately ground me, right? I can see that when I'm looking at the completions nationally, 88% of them are at the certificate level. So I'm happy we're not offering this or considering this at the bachelor's level, right? Because given the data, we might be a little alarmed. Now that we're tuned or, in tune with the award level and we know we're looking at the appropriate award level, now we can just go back to the color coding and immediately the color.
Hold on, because there's some important information on the right, which is National Workforce Educational Attainment. So what is that? What degree do people have who actually work in this field? And you can see 67% of folks don't have a degree at all. And the other 21% have some college. Very small percentage actually have any sort of degree in this, with the most common one being associates. So this is generally a certificate program or less. And, I'll do a little bit more, but and then hand it back to you. When I look at this, I see the number one thing is there's high student demand. Dark green, that's the bright spot for this program. Fairly high absolute volume. And our growth indicators are a little mixed. Google search is off, but new student enrollment's actually up quite a bit, and completion volumes are up. So it's possible that this one will decline moving forward, but so far so good in terms of growth. When employment and competition are, they're fine. They're not fantastic. And remember, when you're picking new programs, you can only do 3 or 5 a year if you're good. Most colleges, that's about the pace. So great is the only kind of program you should really be trying to launch. Go ahead, Mono.
Yeah, I mean, I would just be curious about what this drop in 10 campuses with graduates means, if that means anything. And then I would also, the drop in 10 and then the median program completions at 7. I know there were some questions around like return on investment, if it's such a heavy lift to.
This is smallish, right?
Yeah, you might be investing heavily for a smaller program. And Bob, you can correct me because I know we're not in the business.
No, and the other thing to remember here is it's a certificate. So you only got the student for a year, 18 months. So that 7 completions is not that different from the total number of students enrolled. So, in terms of enrollment, that's going to be a pretty small program.
And then
so I'd be nervous about it in terms of volume.
And then similar dialogues here around, the demographics that we spoke on. The only thing that looks a little bit better here than maybe the program that we were looking at before is the 3.0 job postings per graduate. But keep in mind that when we're considering that along the lines of the 67% educational attainment, the 3.0 job postings per graduate could also be for job postings that maybe don't require any college, is what
Right.
could be suggested here,
Right.
right? So definitely a lot to look at here, and a lot more that we could look at, but trying to keep it as high level as possible. Okay.
Yep.
And
And
then
this is another
cybersecurity.
program that's going to attract guys.
Yep. And cybersecurity.
Yeah, and uh, short answer here is cybersecurity. The first one I think is the one that everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the best programs out there. Far away.
Yeah. So again, right, follow the green. Lots of dark green in the student demand. Almost every category here with a dark green next to the percentile, or with the percentile, meaning lots of size when it comes to student demand, and lots of growth when it comes to student demand. So this is a large field that continues to grow. Employment size, again, lots of dark greens. But then now we're looking at this job postings per graduate, which, this isn't saying, hey, your students aren't going to get jobs. This is more saying, like, what do we need to do to make sure our students get jobs? It's more of an indicator for there could potentially be some work here to bridge your students to those opportunities.
Yeah, and
Wages are
that's
above
changed a
average.
lot in the last couple of years. That number used to be 4 or 5 just a couple of years ago.
Which number?
The job postings per graduate.
Okay.
So it's possible that this is, we're getting a balance now between number of graduates and number of jobs, which was very definitely not true just a year or two ago.
And
So,
then look at the shift on the educational attainment too, just to highlight. Sorry, Bob, I don't want to cut you off. I know we
no,
have
it's
3 more
fine.
minutes. 46% bachelor's, right? Which is way different than that program we were just looking at before. Okay, which is helpful here to look at.
Well, and 23% masters,
Yeah.
right? So we're at 69% with a degree. Well, and then you add in associates. Yeah, there's a degree program for sure. What I've heard that's interesting here, if you all can do it, is that a lot of people who went and got an associates in order to move up in the organization need a bachelor's. It's almost like nursing, where we impose that requirement of RN to BSN. I think there's a big opportunity here to take folks with an associate and give them probably online because they're working, give them a bachelor's degree so they can move up.
Yep. And I mean, we can almost see some of the differences in, depending on the credential and the return on investment, with the differences in wage too here.
And I think the yellow there is a caution on competitive intensity. There are a lot of people. This is not new news that this is a good program. A lot of people in it. 24 new campuses last year, and the median program completions is now not that big. So a little bit careful.
Look at this.
Oh yeah, very competitive.
Yep, it's expensive to market. Okay.
And another guy program, 79% male.
Yep. But again, I mean, pick a program that you want to review and you'll be able to pull this up and we'll update it for you, right? It's just, I don't think it gets much better than that when it comes to program review. So I think it's a good place for us to stop there. I know there were some other programs, but
Tara, that's very helpful. I think what's going on out there, the job market slowed down a bit. So jobs where you could walk out of school and get them 2 years ago, now they're starting to impose tougher requirements because they don't need to hire as many people as they did in the past. So thanks, everybody. And thank you very much, Winnell. So here we are. We spent 15 minutes, and we have a pretty good sense of the attractiveness of 3 different programs at the national level. First thing I would say is don't take that to the bank. You need the numbers for your local market. It can be very, very different at a local level. But that's how long it takes to decide whether it's worth spending any more time understanding this program. And if you can dispense with the ones that aren't interesting quickly, it frees you up to actually go look for other ideas that could be better. So you might think that saying no is a negative to inspiration, to creativity. I look at it just the other way around. If I know if I come up with an idea, I got to spend 6 months studying it. Oh man, I really don't want to do that. But if I can spend 5 minutes to figure out if it's a good idea or not, sure, I'll come up with it. I'll check. It's not a good idea. I'll go look for the next one. So it's really actually a way of encouraging creativity in your organization. And of course, having enough rigor in the evaluation that you're comfortable that the programs you launch are worth the investment. Thanks, everybody. See you again next month, same time, same bat channel.